Well, thank you for joining us. This is Andrew Williams Jr. I'm here with a select group of people today. Today is May the 22nd of 2022. And today we're going to, oh, we have people coming in. Today we're going to kick off Africa Week 2022. As you may or may not know, Africa Week is celebrated, or I should say Africa Day, is normally celebrated on May the 25th. And we'll delve into that history a bit. But before we do that, I'm going to take you on history, a brief trip down history lane. As you, well, I was born on April 24th of 1958. However, I was conceived in 1957, of course. And during that time, Martin Luther King made a historic trip. I'm going to share that briefly with you with my screen. Hold on just a moment, please. For those of us that can't read what I'm about to show you, I'm going to take the time and just read it to you as I go. So please bear with me. The African roots of MLK's vision. Ghana tells us that the forces of the universe are on the side of justice. An old order of colonialism, of segregation, discrimination is passing away now. And this is Martin Luther King Jr. in 1957, the year he visited a newly independent Ghana. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had just returned from Africa ecstatic, alongside African American leaders such as A. Philip Randolph, Adam Clayton Powell, and Ralph Bunche. King was formally invited by Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah to attend the independence ceremony for Ghana. It was March of 1957, and what he witnessed in Ghana would leave King invigorated. I could hear that old Negro spiritual once more crying out, "Free at last, free at last. Great God Almighty, I'm free at last," he told his congregation in his Birth of a Nation sermon in Alabama. I stood there thinking about so many things. Before I knew it, I started weeping. I was crying for joy. A month before this trip, King was disillusioned and in constant pain. Only a few months earlier, the now legendary Montgomery bus boycott successfully concluded. But as the scholar Jocelyn Janine Luckett reflects, in a fit of despair, King wrote to President Eisenhower to protest the extreme violence that emerged in its aftermath. In Alabama, men and women, Black and white, sitting peacefully in buses, have been attacked by snipers. A fortnight ago, a 15-year-old Negro girl was brutally beaten, King wrote. Was the American South going to ever get rid of white supremacist violence? As Kevin Gaines, a professor of Africana Studies, notes, it had only been 3 years since Brown versus Board of Education deemed segregation unconstitutional. At the time, the United States had neither a roadmap to desegregate nor the political will. Patient though he was, King was losing hope. But the opportunity arose for King to witness the fruits of Kwame Nkrumah's nonviolent struggle to rid the Gold Coast colony of West Africa from the British. With the financial and moral support of the Montgomery Improvements Association and Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, King went to Ghana to honor the first African independence ceremony. Standing next to Coretta King, he wept as he saw the Union Jack fall and the new flag of Ghana being raised. King was overcome with the belief that in the depth of his very being, the universe was calling for Black liberation. Ghana tells us that the forces of the universe are on the side of justice. An old order of colonialism, of segregation, discrimination passing away now. and a new order of justice, freedom, and goodwill is being born, he said. That was the first time King publicly proclaimed his cry of freedom, free at last. But we often remember the phrase being uttered as we reminisce on the day he stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, August 28th of 1963. This association, it must be said, is deliberate. National narratives always redeem the nation. They tell us that we are on a constant path towards progress, that every milestone is purely American, and that Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream and America was willing to listen to it. But rarely do high school students in the US get to hear about the king who conceptually linked the old order of colonialism in Africa with the African American struggle against segregation. The civil rights movement undoubtedly falls within a legacy of American resistance, but it also glanced across the Atlantic for inspiration. Civil rights activists were profoundly affected by the decolonialization of Africa. The student movement sojourns to Africa. In 1960, Ella Baker was sent by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, King's organization, to help found the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, as part of its ongoing efforts to secure racial equality through nonviolent action. King had already articulated his inspiration from Africa, but Ella Baker went further. Miss Baker, as she was referred to by many of the students she mentored, once told her biographer that she believed that the liberation movements in Africa and other parts of the world spurred on the US civil rights movement. Indeed, as the historian Bannon J. Wilkins argues, the very formation of SNCC was catalyzed by African independence movements. And its founding conference, Julia Bond, who helped establish the organization, noted that SNCC activists openly stated that we identify ourselves with the African struggle as a concern for all mankind. Under the influence of the African National Congress in South Africa, SNCC chairman John Lewis even said at the March on Washington in 1963 that one man, one vote is the African cry. It must be ours. The SNCC fought for civil rights in America, but it saw its fight as part of a global fight for Black dignity. Black dignity meant a step closer to universal emancipation, and these activists were radical humanists. Only a year after it was founded in 1961, the SNCC accepted James Forman as its executive secretary. Like many of his colleagues, Forman was a young African American who was inspired by the struggle for decolonialization in Africa. Over the course of the past 4 years, he had seen the white supremacist mobs that surrounded the Little Rock Nine. The young African American students who responded to a federal district court mandate by trying to enroll in a central high school. And he witnessed the attack on nonviolent civil rights activists who pushed for desegregation. He paid close attention to apartheid in South Africa, believing that it was intimately tied to oppression in the American South. He questioned whether nonviolence was ever possible, and like many within his milieu, wasn't so sure whether or not the Gandhian principles that influenced King would help the Black struggle in the US. But like King, he too had learned from Ghana. Nkrumah was a person that nonviolent action possible in the US, Foreman recalled. It was under the leadership of young activists like Foreman and Lewis that the SNCC evolved. From 1960 to 1964, the SNCC was the principal organization that registered Black voters to vote. It established freedom schools and organized a freedom summer for white allies to come to the South to help document the nonviolent struggle for voting rights. The SNCC planned sit-ins to desegregate lunch counters, and by 1964, it had even helped form the Mississippi Freedom Party, which unsuccessfully sought to be seated at the Democratic National Convention. The SNCC was arguably the most transformative student movement in the history of the United States. And as a result, of 1964, it was among the most exhausted. In 1964, with the help of the singer and actor Harry Belafonte, the SNCC secured a 3-week invitation to the new country of Guinea, West Africa, as official guests by President Sékou Touré. The organization chose a delegation that included Lewis, Foreman, and others. According to Wilkins, the historian, the SNCC activists attended the opening of a new athletics stadium, visited a printing plant named after the assassinated Congolese premier, Patrick Lumumba, and toured several factories in the aspiring socialist state. James Foreman called the trip the culmination of his life. As a Black continent, he thought Africa could be a beacon to help Blacks achieve political power in the United States. The young students were mesmerized. In the South, they had to risk death to eat at the same lunch counter as their white counterparts. Yet in Africa, they saw Blacks demonstrating the capacity for self-governance. Shortly after the trip to Guinea, most of the SNCC delegates returned to the US to commence their organization duties. But Lewis, along with the activist Donald Harris, continued his tour across Africa, much as Malcolm X had done that very same year. Donald Harris dreamed of seeing the founding of a new African country. He and Lewis traveled to Liberia, Ghana, where they met W.E. and Shirley Graham Du Bois, and Kenya, where they met Malcolm X, before making their way to what was then called Northern Rhodesia to watch the independence ceremony of Zambia. Lewis talked with excitement about the African exiles in Ghana who found solace in their newly independent country. He documented his meetings with exiles from South Africa who built, began, sustained, and continued revolutions against colonial, imperial, and racist powers. In Kenya, after meeting Malcolm X, he realized that it was clear that Africa was doing for Malcolm the same thing that it was doing for us, providing a frame of reference that was both broadening and refreshing. As Wilkins insists, Lewis and Harris had come to Africa questioning the utility and political effectiveness of the civil rights movement, yet still committed to its fundamental rights, principles, and goals. Their sojourn on the continent exposed them to a larger world infused with new possibility and hope, thus solidifying Africa's symbolic and political importance to struggles for freedom in the United States and around the world. The civil rights movement King envisioned was surely American, but it was also in its own way, its own particular way, African. So thank you for joining me with that brief history excursion. And because we have people here that are from around the world, I'd like to kind of open the floor and ask Juliet if you were aware that what has become a civil rights movement in the United States very much was inspired and got its kickoff in South Africa. Juliet, are you there?
Yes, no, I am here. Thank you. I'm Juliet Miabo, based in South Africa, originally from Soweto, which is also still in South Africa. No, I'm fully aware because, you know, if you juxtapose our our Black consciousness movement in South Africa, that place, but then it was already in the 70s. We were able to pick up that the people like Steve Biko were inspired beyond our borders because their way of thinking was quite broad. And that is why actually some of us got, and a lot of other people got inspired by people like Kwame Nkrumah. But it's actually quite surprising to see how broad the inspiration has been, you know, and as South Africans, we feel that was the original liberation struggle, though later the African National Congress took up a more inclusive approach, the more Pan-Africanist and the more civil rights, Black consciousness, Black power has always been the one closest to people's hearts. But for the purpose of moving forward in a multiracial environment, the African National Congress had to take up a more mild approach. That is why even now, I mean, decades later, there's still that argument of whether we're ever sold. I mean, if one organization sold its people for the purpose of inclusivity without actually firstly dealing with the need for liberation. So what we're reading here, it's quite inspirational, and yeah, I see the links, but the deeper we look into it, yeah, the better. And then what we were saying about the South, I don't know if this was during just before the recording, because the similarities in the form of oppression system or oppressive system that we see in South Africa under the apartheid system, it is so similar. If you look at the history of the South in America, it is so similar, the mindset, and that is why the people who live in certain parts of South Africa, particularly the white people, they were more excited about Donald Trump winning elections, I think, than most Americans. And I mean, they were wearing Donald Trump t-shirts, and they were proudly Americans during the Donald Trump, inverted commas, American. So there's so many similarities in our struggles, and I think we learn a lot, but what is said is the struggle still continues, because what happened in the few years when Donald Trump was there, it took not just America back a few steps, a lot of steps. It also took South Africa back, because it made a lot of people who are pro apartheid to believe that apartheid can still come back, and then they can still resurrect the old system, you know. But other than that, it's a learning process, and yeah, I look forward to the discussions here. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much. Before I move to Prophet and Lisa, who were here at the very beginning, I noticed we've been joined by Joshua and Kennedy. And I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, where you're from, and please give us your viewpoint on Africa Day and the relationship between Africa and African Americans.
Okay. Good evening from Ghana, everyone. This is Joshua speaking.
Wait, I'm sorry, just a moment. Yeah, Joshua, you started speaking first, and then we'll have, but can you show us your video, please, if possible?
Okay, give me a minute.
Yeah, and Kennedy, you'll be next. Give us just a moment. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Hello.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Please go right ahead.
Yes, so my name is Joshua Ibiwike. I am a native of Rome Freedom Kingdom in Nigeria. I am currently based in Ghana. So regarding your question about the relationship between Africa Africa. And I'm going to say, I see all Africans as one people, and the division between Africa and the Africans, indigenous Africans based in the continent of Africa, and the Africans in the US, it all started by the time of the slave trade. So that is when the division started. Other than that, before the slave trade, Africans used to travel from Africa to the US for expeditions and adventure. The first recorded travel was Mansa Musa, who was the king of the Mali Empire during the 13th century. Around the time of Mansa Musa's reign, his elder brother, Abdul Salami, if I'm correct, if that was his name, he was the king before Mansa Musa. So he decided to venture into the deep from Mali. You see, Mali has borders with the Atlantic Ocean. So from the research I made, the elder brother of Mansa Musa, he was standing by the sea. So he was looking at it and he was like, okay, he would like to venture, he'd like to adventure, he'd like to see what is beyond these waters. So he told his younger brother, who was Mansa Musa, that I'll be leaving for an adventure and I would like you to become the king while I'm no longer around. So this was before the transatlantic slave trade. So I see that we are one people, we're a larger family group, just that because of the ocean separating us, we can't live together. But still, at the end of the day, we still have to depend on each other for some of our basic needs, some productions which are done here, which are not also done there. So this is my brief view of the relationship between Africans on the continent and Africans elsewhere, especially in the US. Thank you.
Well, thank you. But before you go, tell us a little bit about the work you're doing right now. As I understand it, well, please tell us about your organization, and then we'll get to Kennedy. But please tell us a little bit more about what you're doing.
Okay. Currently, I'm running a network called African Youth in Tourism Network, where a group of youths scattered across the continent and the diaspora who are into tourism, and we're trying to use tourism as a tool to enhance development in Africa and in the diaspora, and to also build economic relationships. So our network is currently on WhatsApp. We have a WhatsApp business channel, which we are currently operating. We're a startup phase. So our launch, our 1 year anniversary will be coming up on the 27th of July. So that's what I'm currently doing now. Plus I have my side businesses, such as my stock trading and some other little ventures, which I do engage in. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Kennedy, could you unmute and introduce yourself, please? Also,
yeah.
Yes, go right ahead, Kennedy. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Okay, I am Ezrin Chinedu Kennedy. I am an African, a humble actor and founder of the African Coaches League. I'm presently in Nigeria. Yes, so the African Coaches League gave me a very huge insight about the relationship of Africans and our African Coaches team. I realized that the slaves from other parts of the world, were dispersed as a result of slavery or migration, since I got was, oh, I've been longing for many years to see what you bring it back to motherland. I love this initiative, African Produce. Yes, I'm interested. Advisors. It was so just like the way he reacted was how a lot of our African brothers in diaspora reacted. They
Kennedy,
were
Kennedy,
so happy.
Kennedy, excuse me, but your sound is coming through very distorted. Maybe you
And
could
I
turn off your video.
realized additionally that the relationship
Kennedy, Kennedy, please turn off your video.
between us in Africa and our brothers in diaspora is cordial, is strong like the rock of Gibraltar.
Kennedy, can you hear me? Kennedy.
Hello?
Yeah, Kennedy.
Hello?
Yeah, Kennedy, turn off your video. We're having a problem hearing your audio. Turn off your video. Turn off your, yes. And say
Hello?
that again. We hear you.
It's breaking.
Say again. Your audio was very
It's
bad.
breaking. I can't hear you clearly. But can you hear me now?
We cannot hear you very well. So try to say that again.
All right. Yes. So I said, can everyone hear me? Hope I can be heard.
Yes, we hear you now, but please go ahead and say what you said before. We did not hear that.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. You know, this is one of the challenges that we face in Africa, which I believe one day it will be sorted out. Yes, I am Ezrim Chinedu Kennedy, the founder and the global coordinator of the African Coaches League. I live in Nigeria, but everything about me is African. I'm a Pan-African. I'm an African. I believe in the abilities of Africa. Now, the relationship between Africans at home and our brothers in diaspora is cordial. You know, I was so glad when the African Coaches League came on board and my team. The first thing that came to mind was how do we connect our brothers all over the world? You know, so when we started sending out messages, sending out emails, the responses we got was brilliant, was encouraging, was motivational. They all say yes. And one of the responses we got was, wow, we have been longing to see what will bring us back home. We've been trying to see how we can be connected to something back home. We want to see the motherland. We want to see how they reason, how they behave, how they eat, how they dance, how they dress, and all that. So I realized that, or we realized that the relationship between we here and our brothers outside Africa is so great. In fact, it's stronger, is what is as strong as the rock of Gibraltar. You know, even up to today, we are still receiving more people. I can say that our brothers in diaspora will have more members outside Africa than members in Africa. That is to show that the relationship is very friendly and it's encouraging. And then what I do, I am also a coordinator of a local NGO called AHIABGA-TV Foundation. You know, it is just similar to what we did in the African Coaches League. Because all we do basically is to correct the wrong stereotype in coaching, we correct the wrong stereotype in education, or how people do their things. Because we realize that in everything, in all things, we have the African way of doing things, which is not bad, but we just have to make some adjustments, you know, to work in line with how it's supposed to be done, so that we don't mislead the younger generation. You know, when it comes to education, our system of education is dwindling or is dropping because there's no one to maybe nurture it or no one to maybe sustain it. You know, so these are the things I do just to see how we can bridge the gap using education, you know, as a veritable to give our people voice, empower them, make them stay afloat, make them stay employable, relevant, you know, and valuable. So that is what I've been doing in the African Coaches League as well as AHIABGA Foundation. So in conclusion, I am so glad even Dr. Andrew is our global advisor in the African Coaches League. When I told him about, and then Dr. Janice, Ambassador Janice told him about the African Coaches League, he was delighted and he came on board without giving it a second thought. So I believe the relationship between we here and our brothers in diaspora is cordial. Thank you very much. And I'm open to learn more from brilliant minds in this meeting. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Maddie, Louise, you came in a little bit late, but what we're doing is we first took time to explore the background and relationship between us here in the United States, in particular, because of the work of Martin Luther King. He actually visited Ghana during its independence, but when he came back from that trip, that was the first time he used the expression free at last. And he said that his experience in Ghana had helped him to visualize a way forward for us here in America. Now, Maddie, as I understand it, you're actually in one of the Caribbean islands. Are you able to unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I am Madly Louise. I am in Martinique, French Caribbean. And yes, okay. I studied post-colonial study, then I am an historian. And effectively, I am familiar with the Black studies and the relationship between Afro-American and Afro-descendants and Africa, and also the way that we appropriate ourselves, not really the way we appropriate, the way we learn to remember and to stay connected, even if we were separated from Africa. And that's it. I am a startup founder, a peace innovation ecosystem involved in design, but also arts, fashion, technologies, and of course, all that allow us to fight, to be part of this climate action. And that's it. Do you have a question in particular?
Well, actually, just 2 weeks ago, the ministry from CARICOM, which represents all of the Caribbean states, made a trip to South Africa to establish a relationship between South Africa and CARICOM in the Caribbean. So are you active or involved or interested in trying to connect the dots between your work there in the Caribbean and Africa or Africa Americans?
Oh yes, of course. I am already doing this work, in particular in arts and also in the entrepreneurship area. And yes, of course, I am interested in doing that and in connecting, yes, more Caribbean and Africa. Yeah.
Well, you know,
and I think that here I can also introduce you to many local associations that actually working really, really hard for that. Yeah. Today it's the 22 May. That's the slavery abolishment day here. And later I'll go to a celebration next to the beach in the south of the island, because we are going to gather to celebrate the ancestors. And we have a lot of celebration like that around music, drums, but also celebration, prayers for the ancestors. And also in the island, in the Caribbean, but in Martinique also, we really have a great network of young people, Gen Z, millennials, that try to connect and to learn from the elders, all that is in link with the traditions, with the cultures, with the plants. And they are really, really dynamic. And I think that will be a great match to connect you with them at a local level.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Well, again, Lisa Anise and Prophet Cox, you were here at the beginning, but before I come to you, I'm going to briefly share my screen again with a little bit more historical reference, if I can, to Africa Day. that's why we're actually here. It's coming up on May the 25th will be Africa Day, but I want to take you back now to 2020 because that's when the Parliament of South Africa actually had a commemoration for Africa Day. So again, for those that can't see the small writing, I'm going to take the time to read it so you'll be better able to come along with what we're doing here. Africa Day in 2020 was celebrating or focused on that year's theme of silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for Africa's development to achieve the goal of a conflict-free Africa. As we all know, COVID-19 has sidetracked a lot of the initiatives that were going on, but in light of today's activities, I suggest that we revisit this to be a continuing effort that we make on a regular, ongoing basis, not just one day or 1 year, but forever. But on May 25th of 1963, Africa made history with the founding of the Organization African Unity, OAU, greater unity and solidarity between African countries and its people. Since then, the 25th May has been celebrated widely across the world, particularly in Africa, to signify excuse me, Africa's identity and unity. The African Union, AU, is a key driver of Agenda 2063, which is a strategic framework for the socio-economic transformation of our continent. Agenda 2063 seeks to realize the African people's aspirations for sustainable growth and development across Africa. The 7 aspirations indicating what the people of Africa want from Agenda 2063 are: 1, a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. 2, an integrated continent, politically united and based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and the vision of Africa's Renaissance. Number 3, an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. 4, a peaceful and secure Africa. 5, an Africa with a strong cultural identity, common heritage, shared values, and ethics. 6, an Africa where development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, and caring for children. Africa is a strong, united, resilient, and influential global player and partner. Again, this is from 2020, but I'll review it. I believe it has relevance now. Africa Day 2020 in the Parliament of South Africa. The EU has embraced the theme, silencing the guns, creating conducive conditions for Africa's development to achieve the goal of a conflict-free Africa. This theme also speaks to ending gender-based violence, GBV, which is one of the critical discussions in Parliament's continued and decentralized dialogues to review the Women's Charter, a declaration of intent that clearly defines the rights and privileges for women by women in South Africa. Significantly, Africa Day 2020 is being commemorated in the shadow of the global COVID-19 pandemic. The EU has described COVID-19 as a pandemic that will require coordinated efforts of its member states, the World Health Organization, and other partners to limit transmission and minimize harm. One major side effect of the COVID-19 lockdown is that many cases are reporting a surge in cases of gender-based violence, as well as violence against children. Africa Day is being celebrated during a time that will test all of humanity as we battle the preservation of life and our economy. Parliament supports the AU's initiative for peaceful interventions in conflict across the continent. In keeping with the Republic's foreign policy, Parliament engages proactively with parliaments of countries where South Africa has been involved in efforts to build peace. Parliament participates in several African organizations, including the legislative arm of the AU, the Pan-African Parliament, and the Southern African Development Community Parliament Forum, SADC-PF. Africa Day presents an opportunity for South Africans to reconnect and commit ourselves to develop a better Africa and a better world. Celebrating Africa Day and African unity. Across the globe, people of African descent are encouraged to celebrate and commemorate the day by becoming active in or by making donations to worthy causes and other activities, which include virtual activities that focus on arts and crafts, dance, poetry, music, and fashion, debates on topical issues affecting the continent, like xenophobia, workshops and exhibitions, and tours of the African continent. Initiatives of the African Union. Again, even though this was in 2020, all of this is still relevant to us today. The AU has implemented many initiatives on the continent to collectively alleviate Africa's challenges, which include the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD. NEPAD aims to promote Africa's development through the promotion of democracy, human rights, accountability, transparency, and participatory governance. The AU has embraced the Ibrahim Index of African Governance, which is linked to clean governance. The IIAG provides an annual assessment of the quality of governance in AU member states. It assesses critical areas of safety and rule of law, participation, and human rights, sustainable economic development, and human development. The African Peer Review Mechanism, APMR, is a monitoring tool that has been developed by NEPAD. It aims to monitor governance, performance, and progress to ensure the promotion of political stability, accelerated sub-regional and continental economic integration, economic growth, and sustainability. The African Continental Free Trade Area, ACFTA, is the largest free trade agreement since the creation of the World Trade Organization. African leaders signed the Kigali Declaration on the establishment of this trade agreement on the 10th Extraordinary Summit of the Assembly of the African Union in Kigali, Rwanda on 21 March 2018. So, Silencing the Guns aims to resolve the scourge of domestic wars that have ravaged the continent. The AU Peace and Security Council has adopted this resolution in the effort to end continental conflicts. The year 2020 is earmarked by the AU for the achievement of this important milestone. Through this initiative, civil conflicts, gender-based violence, and genocide are expected to decrease. Symbols of the African Union. The description of the AU emblem. The palm trees shooting up on either sides of the outer circle stand for peace. The gold circle, again, symbolizes Africa's wealth and bright future. The green circle, again, stands for Africans' hopes and aspirations. The plain map of Africa without boundaries in the inner circle signifies African unity. The small interlocking red rings at the base of the emblem stand for African solidarity and the blood shed for the liberation of Africa. The AU flag, the hope and aspiration is symbolized by the green color of the flag. As of this writing, 2020, the 55 African Union member states included Algeria, Angola, Benin, Botswana, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Cabo Verde, Central African Republic, Chad, Comoros, Democratic Republic of Congo, Djibouti, Egypt, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Gabon, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Libya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mali, Mauritania, Mauritius, Morocco, Mozambique, Namibia, Nigeria, Rwanda, Saudi Arab Democratic Republic of Western Sahara, Sao Tome and Principe, Senegal, Seychelles, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Africa, South Sudan, Tanzania, Togo, Tunisia, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Did you know the AU motto is a united and strong Africa? The AU has headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and the AU's legislative arm, the Pan-African Parliament, is located in Midrand, South Africa. So with that, I thank you for allowing me to share this information with you, and I'll open up the floor for any questions before we go to Prophet and Lisa Anise.
Yes, I have a question. How can we communicate on the project you are talking about towards other associations? For example, I have a really great network of facilitators in South Africa, and they are already connected with many communities and involved in work with them. I have people also in Caribbean, in Martinique, in United States. And what do we have to tell them? What is what do you want from them for this project?
Well, that's an excellent question. Juliet, I've pinned you to the chat. Are you able to join us, Juliet Mayabo?
Yes, I am here.
Yes, well,
Yes.
Maddie asked, how could she become involved where she is with activities that we're describing here and link them to South Africa? Because you are in South Africa, and also you're the media coordinator for Andrew's network in South Africa. I'm now drafting you to be the connector between her and us. Congratulations.
Okay. I know it's not that I had a choice.
So,
but I do appreciate her comment that she already has a few plan communities that works in. We look at communities, and I'm sure some of them are some of the ones we work in. And what we can then do, what's important is to actually bring in the relevance of all this work that's been done by the African Union, by the Liberation, and also just to bring the connection and bring the relevance to people, because unfortunately, except for 1994, the current generation are not able to see the liberation movement, the Black consciousness movement, or any other movement happening in the world for Black people, by Black people. They're not able to bring it closer to themselves. There is a small group, and I call it small, groups of thinkers ourselves. We are always engaging and talking, but we are such a small group that what we do, it's almost like a drop in an ocean. So working with her and what she's already doing with other people, they will be able to use the Andrew Williams Junior Network and the AHIABGA-TV and other networks to bring it closer to people, or else it's all going to be lost. I mean, already, as you can see here, there's 6 of us, but we need to bring in more young people into play and make it more relevant using all media. No, this is awesome.
Okay.
We will work on something. Yeah, and let's stay in touch. I know we did meet in one of the other meetings. I think one of the meetings a while ago. So we did promise that we'll connect.
Yeah, I have your contact from this previous meeting. I'll connect. I'll contact you. Okay.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
let's
And
do the work.
excuse me, do you know in South Africa, um, uh, uh, I don't know if, yes, an organization, a non-profit called CDRA?
What does it stand for?
Oh, I can tell you there, but I just know that there are facilitators, and I have a work session with them this weekend, this week, in the middle. I think that's I don't know which day, but I think that this week. Consequently, I'm going to speak with them about that, and we'll connect for that. Okay?
Send me
Because I know
the
they are a big organization. They are already connected also with UN, and I think with many other non-profit in the world, and I think that can really make impact because you are two important networks doing the same thing.
Definitely. No, definitely.
Yeah.
I think
And for
what matters.
I'll do it by my side, and I'll tell you also. I'll contact all the organization I see that are the same level of vibration and consciousness. And I am already doing this work of observing them, because sometimes they can say that they are doing something, but when you look at closely, you can see that they are not really correct on everything. But there's many other organization I am following for maybe more than 5 years now, 5-6 years, when I return in the island, and they are really serious, and their engaged, their commitment is authentic.
Okay.
Well, in that regard, I'd ask you to do that by email and also include me in it. So we'll have a paper trail to work with. And that way we can invite others as we go forward. Joseph Akinola is not here with us now, but he's been very helpful in putting together our communications networks. So I'm going to briefly segue now back to Lisa Anise and then to Prophet, and then we'll come back to this conversation. Lisa Anise, please go ahead, introduce yourself, etc. Thank you.
Okay. Well, firstly, what I wanted to say is I have another meeting at 1 that I have to go to because I have to give them information and whatnot. But in the meantime, this work that we are doing to connect on a global scale, the more I see, the more I've realized that it is a very in-depth plan that has undoubtedly taken many years to put together. And what I also keep running across over and over is so many people who are like-minded without ever having met each other before. That there's been this similar thought, this similar idea that has drawn us all in one direction. There is a saying that the best partnerships are ones with those whose goals run parallel. And I've seen that work very well, even if they don't run parallel for very long. Things move along quite a bit faster. My work dealing with dance cultures and their related factors comes down to working with a medium that has been fractured and marginalized for a good many years, starting way back before World War II. In fact, I would venture to say probably around 1920. Culture is the very identity of man. It's how we communicate with each other. It was the earliest form. It was actually the very first thing that we started to do to try to copy our own heartbeat, where we'd work hard and we'd get that rhythm going, and then we'd seek to recreate it because of the exhilaration of the action of just exertion would cause. And then we started outside of motion, started putting stones and sticks and whatnot together to create that rhythm for other people who hadn't heard it yet inside. There's no country without a dance. This is something that is very elemental, although I don't think I really need to make that clear here, because that understanding is what comes through all of us, that we all seek to copy this rhythm, this beat. Dance as a culture is one of many of the art forms that do precede political movements. We were having a brief discussion, myself and Prophet here, about the changes that we saw here in the United States in the early 2000s. And of course,
excuse me, Lisa, I know your time is limited, but since today's topic is about Africa, you were the first one to bring to my attention the fact that dance culture, particularly African dance culture, has influenced the entire world, but particularly, so perhaps you could speak on that before you leave.
Fabulous. Okay. My goodness. The most common dance, the largest dance culture all over the planet right now is hip hop culture. It's been preceded by a number of others that many countries have tried to lay claim to. One of those is the tango. The tango had a different name, but it was one of the earliest of the partner dances, and it came over from sub-Saharan Africa, along with swing dance, samba, and a number of others that we've renamed and absorbed into a variety of different cultural groups. Retracing dance's roots, every single dance form we have started somewhere in Africa. Certainly other developments in music and politics have changed how they've been expressed and performed. The one that I note most obviously is the tarantella out in Greece and Italy. But even then, it was the very same thing performed to a different type of beat. Earliest form of communication between peoples that didn't understand themselves was movement, whether by shadows on the wall or acting out previous any kind of actions. It was one of the earliest ways people started to understand each other. And working to unify dance cultures, or even find those dance cultures that have been separated and pushed into corners all over the planet is, well, it's quite the job. But the first job of UNESCO, where I am a member, is preservation. And that comes before anything else, especially personal interest, because we're dealing with the very history of man, the only true history there is, one that cannot be hidden or marred, only obliterated. And it's the very first victim of war and conflict.
Well, I see hands raised by both Prophet and Juliet, but before you go, let me ask you about breakdancing.
I'm going to get cut off for a funeral shortly, so just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Well, yes, before you go, tell us a little bit about breakdancing, because it will be considered an Olympic sport in 2024, and again in Paris, and again in 2028 in Los Angeles. And as we know, the hip hop or breakdancing originated here, or at least it was popularized here in the United States. But as I've seen footage of dances throughout Africa, it seems to be that hip hop has a cultural linkage that takes us to Africa. Do you foresee ways that we can involve hip hoppers from around the, or break dancers from around the world with these upcoming competitions, or how can we get them involved now so that they can have their voices heard or their sounds shared?
Well, this is one of the beauties of the basic model of UnityNet, where we create community partnerships, which very much like the old story of Stone Soup, everybody has a part in everybody else's success. Hence, no one is left behind. And during this process of just reinvigorating Africa and Africans, and helping them to realize their own power simply by a restoration to the land and getting in touch with their neighbors. Through that process, we will be discovering more and more dancers and dance forms across the entire continent. And the most common form of dance that we've found thus far has been hip hop related, using the music that's been reinterpreted with more local instruments, more local tunes. It all comes down to being that same base that I've seen here, where hip hop isn't just dance. It's the music, it's the beats, it's the art forms, and it's the holistic approach of the hip hop culture itself that dictates that breaking in the Olympics as one of the 4 pillars of hip hop can't be removed from hip hop culture without damaging the whole. So maintaining it within the scope of hip hop culture and that connection to the roots, it becomes a far more unifying factor. So through this large project, which I've had the good fortune to stumble upon with UnityNet, we'll be able to create those roads for upward momentum for the deserving academic, athlete, and artists. And not just with hip hop, but with many other facets and subjects. So,
Well, thank you very much. I know you have to go. And Prophet, I hear you have to leave too. So I'll turn it over to you before getting to Juliet. So Prophet Cox, please, at your convenience.
Prophet Anyanu Cox, yes, someone, a friend's daughter, young.
A little louder, please. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I was just saying that a friend's daughter, she's in her 20s, died suddenly, and so they're having a memorial today at in about 7-8 minutes. So I was enjoying the conversation and discussion. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're a little low, but we do hear you. Yes.
Let me try to turn it up. See if I can turn up some.
That's
Yeah,
better.
that's high. Yeah, that's kind of high as it goes. Yeah, just a friend, her daughter, she has twins, and one of them just suddenly killed. So, but anyway, so what's the question around unity or
Well, they're really, this is kind of like an open, you're in Kansas. I mean, the whole idea now is to connect together. We're celebrating Africa Day or Africa Week, but finding connections between Africa and the diaspora. You're in Kansas City. It seems to me that there's been a lot of history there that has relevance to this.
Yeah, there's Wichita, and we have a underground railroad here in Kansas, which is great. I had an opportunity years ago to pour libation there. It was quite an amazing experience. And so we also have the Council of Elders here, which I'm installed elder, and one of our elders has connected in Ghana, and I think it's the Krobo people, and so they have actually given the Council of Elders about 50 acres of land in Ghana for us to build on and establish society there. So we do have some linkages there. I know I'm kind of going fast over this. I enjoyed the discussion. I'm glad you're having it. I like the fact that you brought quite a few very strong points to this, and people have mentioned Pan-African and the struggle. Yeah, I think the young people today, they don't vibe to that because we haven't done anything, I believe. I mean, we've done some stuff, but they don't see the result of it. They're still getting shot in the streets and that kind of thing, I think. So, but we have a struggle, and some of this we've talked about in some of the groups, healing circles, like what do we do? How do we move forward? Because so many things, and I'm a little different than a lot of Americans in that I didn't get caught up in the whole Trump thing because so much energy was spent on Trump and hatred, and it's spewed out into the atmosphere, and it's toxic to the nervous system and the immune system, that I just didn't get caught up in that. And it didn't really do very much because many people said he was the worst president ever, yet we've had presidents who held slaves and all that. So,
But before you leave, is there any relevant comment about?
Now I want to talk about the unity. I'm coming around talking about unity if you let me do that quick piece. Is that the struggle, I think it has to be a both and. The struggle that I'm seeing is that during the time of Black Wall Street and so many of the cities across the United States that were prospering, Black cities, they prospered when we were segregated. And they were destroyed by the white populace because even though we were not allowed at their counters and their schools and their hospitals, we still prospered. We had millionaires, and so then they were destroyed by the people who didn't want us there. So the idea that unity means coming together with everybody, but when we came together with everybody, our literacy rate dropped, our poverty level went up, our disease level went up. So the question is, yes, from a divine, God created all of us place, we all need to be united. From another rather practical place, the more we integrated, the less we didn't do as well. Let's just put it that way. So it wasn't just under Trump, it was that way prior. The drugs that hit the streets, friends of mine that were addicted, and they know when the drugs hit the streets in the 60s and how a lot of the movement that happened here, a lot of the kind of getting out there and the advocacies kind of went into a nod. A couple of people told me here, at least for Detroit, let me talk about Michigan, that a lot of what was happening, it hit the streets. So there is a system that pumped it out. The drug dealers were not the only ones. They didn't go over to Asia and get the drugs. I know it sounds like I'm ranting, but I'm coming to how do we do the unity? We have to come together as a human race. Yet, for us as a people, we haven't figured out yet how to do that without losing ourselves, or so it seems. So I see you seem like you're getting a bit impatient with it, but I'm just trying to lay out there's a struggle. It's not that easy, like we all come together and sing kumbaya, because when we do, I have grandchildren who are in schools, and so I constantly have to keep them educated. Otherwise, they lose who they are. They forget, where they come from. So, real quick, another quick thing, and sort of an analogy. I work with foster and adopted parents, and so I know that children, oftentimes who are adopted, they want to go and find their parents, and that's where I see the diaspora. Many of us want to look to Africa to find our, who we are, our DNA, having our DNA checked. What
Well,
country?
before you leave, though, could you tell us more about your work with the 400 African American History Commission and its relevance to the African diaspora before you leave, please?
Well, let me just say this, my greatest work with the diaspora is around the healing circles, and that's healing trauma. That has nothing to do with the 400 Commission. The 400 Commission was put in place, I believe, had something to, well, I won't say because we're live, I can't say that. But the 400 Commission, we take a look at 400 years of the first arrival of Africans in this country in chains. And from that point to 2019 was our charge, is to take a look at it, commemorate it, just as we're doing Africa Day. We were to on August 25th, 2019, to commemorate, and we did that, the arrival of the first Africans, and to say that, and to highlight the struggle. That was a part of our task, highlight the struggle that we've had for 400 years, as well as highlight the achievements. We know that there were many heroes and sheroes. We know that there were many inventions. We know that there was art, there was culture, there was film, there was music, there was dance. And so to highlight the accomplishments that were not highlighted, because history was written in a way that it did not show who we were. And so hopefully that answers it. The greatest,
Yes.
we're talking about the work that I do, I guess that I am excited about, is the healing of the trauma, and to find out the science backs up the fact that the trauma that we went through actually does affect the DNA, and that we do need to do some healing. And because we have been, like Carter G. Woodson in Miseducation of the Negro, we have been educated and enculturated a certain way, and because of that, we do a lot of harm now to each other. What used to be done to us by others, we're now doing ourselves. And so we're going back now to do the healing, to do re-education, to do rewriting the history. That's one of the models of the 400 Commission, is that we go forward rewriting. We write a new history is what we're doing, because the old history was written by someone else. We need to go back. So all of the that I heard Juliet and you say, Prince Andrew, that this idea there was something going on, and Martin Luther King went to Ghana to find this out and find that out, and find that there's this great movement of liberation happening in Africa, and we can do that too, and we can return home on some level to home as Africa, to be able to reclaim what was snatched away from us. And so the heartbreak for me, and I'm sure for a lot of young people, as I talk to my grandchildren, is now we want to work with Africa because somehow somebody figured out that Africa was getting free. And it's just, I know it sounds conspiratorial, but it sounds like somebody got involved in seeing that some of that was altered. But yeah, so the struggle in my, as I wrap it up, is that, because I do need to shift my Zoom, is that how do we unite? And I guess I reach out to those who, I don't know if Lisa and Lisa's still here, maybe this is something for another time. How do we reach out to those who did colonize and enslave, but yet they have descendants who want to be a part of the healing? How do we help them to understand that we do need to heal? We can't just hold hands and say it's all better. We have to be, can they allow us to be in spaces? And I don't mean just the healing circles. Can they allow, because it was in the segregation where we found our greatest strength. We can't do that any longer. Are they willing to be okay with sometimes we have to come together in our own circle, in our own homes, our own communities, our own villages? We have to come together and we have to heal. We have to even plan. If we're going to have a democracy, we don't need to model a democracy after those who enslaved us. We don't want to build our houses with the tools of the oppressor. We need to really go back and fetch it, stand a kofa, go back and get that which was good and righteous. Everything in Africa was not, obviously, from history. But how do we do that and they not feel like they're being left out? That they really are part of it. But when I go in my house and take care of my son and myself, I'm not leaving you out. I'm just taking care of my house. So it's nothing personal. So anyway, but I got to get on this, Ellen. Thank you so much for allowing me that few minutes to be patient.
You're very welcome, and thanks so much for your participation. Juliet, you patiently had your hand raised. So back to you, Juliet Miabo.
Yes, no, thank you. Sure, because, okay, let me not start with because. I'm starting with because there's a lot on my mind. But I'd like to pick, okay, if I need to indicate that I work with youth, I work with women, I work with the elderly. I was raised by a grandmother who was quite active, who worked closely with the likes of Winnie Mandela. But personally, I didn't get that involved in the ANC struggle, but I orientated myself around the vision of Kwame Nkrumah, and I was quite inspired by Steve Biko, Malcolm X, other people who to Miriam Makeba. So I'm just highlighting the fact that intergenerationally we've had inspirations, and what I'm concerned about, and as the leader and as the head of the Soweto CSI Council, one of the things that we always make corporations and organizations who want to do things in townships is that whatever you do needs to speak to the heart and the soul of the people, and it must address the real needs of the people. I'm mentioning this because it's a pity that really listen to this or we'll have a discussion at some point, that in line with what you're reading, Prince Andrew, is that whatever programs, whatever needs to be done in Africa, whatever needs to be done in partnership, in cooperation, in networks, has to be aligned to where people are. I very much believe that as Africa and as Africans, we know who we are. We know where we were and where we are going. But there are a lot of voices out there. I think that comes from one of the, there are too many voices out there that are not quietening down enough to hear what the young people are saying. The popularity of a genre of music, the African music called Amapiano currently, and the lyrics of Amapiano, because it's not just about the style of music, it's also the words that are coming out of there. It is almost like Africans are using music, modern music, contemporary music, to express how they feel or how they want to shut what is happening around them. And I think to summarize is to say that, I do appreciate being a creative and being a person who works in the performing arts. I appreciate all genres of music, of dance. There's no limitation. And the reality is all of that started and comes from Africa, like all of humanity. Yet I find that as leaders, we want to lead Africa into what Africa is not. And I'm being honest, this is Africa Week, this is Africa Month. I'm going to be as honest as I can be. Because in all African countries and communities, there are specific indigenous forms of dance. There are specific dance and moves that are originally from those communities. And I look at the dance like breakdance. Breakdance, its movements, you can see, comes from a lot of movements from original African dances. So that one can relate to. But if you go back to music, maybe the term hip hop tends to be the problem because of its connotations. Because in a lot of communities that has specific connotations. But if hip hop means a new generation being able to express themselves, that is okay. But that is almost like, okay, why is the word hip hop when there is Inkondlo, there's Imbonyi, they're all expressing. I mean, I call them all poets. I call all of it poetry in motion. So this is, I think, the discussion for another day. But Africa is very diverse. Africa is very dynamic, and Africa and Africans need to move into what is happening. As Joshua was saying, we do not. You see, there's a point where we were forced to lose our identity because of the gun that was pointed on our faces. But now there are no guns pointing at our faces. Yet I feel that as Africans, we need to be aware of the mental or psychological guns, where because of our economic status, because of our lack of resources, because of our lack of doors and networks that we can get into, it's in the UN or in UNESCO or World Bank or anywhere else, what we then do, we end up not being able to sing the tunes that we know are in our hearts. We end up singing the tunes that are the ones that will open doors to finances. So it is said when Africa responds and reacts on the basis of what is available out there, rather than on expressing who they are. And I believe that Africa Month, Africa Day should be about, or being African in totality, should be about truly embracing who we are. And as Africans, I'm saying this to even the people who are here, Mehdi, Joshua, the other gentleman, Prince Andrew, myself, and anyone else who's listening, is that we need to be able to express what being African means, because we are now are not leading that conversation of who we are. And that is, I'm glad that we have the meeting on the 25th, the Africa Day celebration on the 25th, is that even if when we embrace the diaspora, if we embrace the African diaspora, we need to embrace the African diaspora under the context and contextualizing what African means. But it seems like now it's the other way around. And I'm saying this with all the love and the unity that we need, because that's one of the topics we're talking about. But we don't, as a South African, I've experienced it firsthand. I've tasted it and felt it, how at times unity resulted in the majority losing their identity. So globally, as the world is becoming one, as we are meeting as a global community, we should not move to a point where unity means that those who don't have the resources, the money, and the access actually lose their identity to what is defined by others. And I'm seeing what happened in South Africa. Seems to be like that's where things will go, unless Africans, whether from the diaspora or Africa, really start taking a stand and say, this is what it means to be African. These are the songs. This is what matters to us. These are the programs. This is, rather than say we will go with the tune that brings in the dollar. I'm saying this from my heart, and I'm hoping that as a global unity organization, as this platform, Prince Andrew, you will use your powers, your access, and everything else to actually position Africa and Africans as people who should have the confidence of saying this is who we are and who we are matters, and therefore should also define what African means, because it gets lost. So we can easily have unity, global unity, with Africa disappearing, like it happened here in South Africa, where being South African became defined by those who are economically empowered, which are the majority, the white people, and Black people are now struggling to hold on to the identity. But there is a whole move towards, to making sure that we don't do that, we don't lose that, and we shouldn't lose it on a global level. And we are all Africans as human beings, doesn't matter, we are all life-started in Africa, but Africa must define what that means rather than buying it from outside or begging it from outside. Thank you.
Well, Prophet, I see you're still with us. Go right ahead.
Only because I have two systems, but based on, I'm glad we're here. And so I want to ask Juliet, because I agree absolutely with her. From what I experienced, many of us are looking for the authentic African. We want that historically, knowing that Africa goes back, the pyramids, the Sphinx, that some say go back 70,000 years. We're looking for that authentic African. The question is, after colonization, what is it? And that is something that has to be defined. We have scholars in this country who have written many books on Africa and ancient Africa, and we study those here, trying to get back to the greatness of Africa in our own minds and hearts. So I'm asking her, what does that look like? Or I heard someone on one of the meetings who was from one of the indigenous African countries. I heard them say they don't want the traditional. They're going forward. And so what does that look like? Who would make that? Who would come up with that? Because we're looking for that. We're looking for the authentic. We're looking for what we can be a part of, that when it was once, and I see her hand is up. Yeah, so I'm just putting that question out there, because absolutely, it's not for us to find, it's for us to take hold of it. But some of it is looking awful Western to me from where I sit. So help us out.
May I answer, Prince Andrew? Okay.
Of course.
Yes. Yes. If you listen to what I said for the couple of minutes there, I don't believe I used the word traditional. I don't even believe that I used the word cultural or specifically traditional, because there's a difference between tradition and
this
culture.
is another form.
Tradition is the repetition.
This is someplace else. This wasn't you, so I'm sorry about that.
Okay, no. I no. There's a reason why I'm bringing it up, because I'm also highlighting the fact that tradition is a repetition of values for over and over. I mean, the Catholic system is a traditional system. Any system that just gets repeated is a tradition. But culturally, you see, obviously the world has modernized the same way that from years ago, Africa was going to develop, Africa was going to use its resources. I'm just saying that was, in the sense that Africa was and would have used resources as they were doing, as we were doing before colonization. It's just that colonization did it with guns and said, okay, we are going to do it, and you're just going to stand by and pick up the crumbs. So whatever Africa is, I'll just use an example now. I mean, we talk about music. If we go deeper, and hip hop is okay, it's universal known, but it is not. You cannot say hip hop is an African genre of music, and we've had discussions like that on various groups here in South Africa. It might be, I don't know how it's inspired by Africa, but unless it's inspired by poems. But what I'm saying, whatever Africa is, the West, and I'm going to be specific, the West needs to take the time to listen, needs to, I mean, the same way that you are doing, Prophet Cox, the same way that you have organizations like the ones that are headed by Princess Tsepi, the same way that you have, so when people are dancing, and that's one of the calls I was trying to make to UNED, to UnityNet African Diaspora, the African groups, to say, whatever performance you can bring in that highlights the significance or that tells a story about a community or about your country, please bring that forward. Because in the music, in the dances, the dances that I post on on the various groups. The African is the Setswana dance. Those are current dances that are happening now. The Indlam, which is a Zulu dance, that is happening now over the weekend in townships. That is what Africa is, and that has a meaning. So every form of Indlamu has a meaning. So Africa is, let me put it this way, Africa is lost. Africa may have lost the economic battles because of the gun. I'll just put it that way. But Africa has not lost who it is. Because even in terms of clothing and fashion, in terms of everything else, I know, I think because of the story, the history, African Americans are inspired by Ghana. They're inspired. I mean, Kwame Nkrumah has done great work. I know at some point I looked at, the Ghanaian material, and I admire that because of my sentiments towards Ghana. But what that does is it almost closes. It means that we also need to open up to see what else is there. What is the meaning of the leopard skin versus the skin of the springbok? I don't know what it is the springbok. I'm sure you know what that is. So Africa is still there. What unfortunately Africa needs to start, and I thank God for platforms like this and others, needs to start saying what Africa is and not shy away. I mean, as the people on this platform know that I tend to be vocal, and at times depending what the theme is, I keep quiet. But I think it is important that this month we become honest that how is it that Malawi, when I know how much culture there is in Malawi, how much depth there is culturally in Malawi, how is it on Africa Month or Africa Week when we say Malawi, give us a poem, give us a dance, showcase something, but they don't come forth? You see, have we been so colonized that we are thinking only in terms of academics, but we are not thinking in terms of who we are as Africans? So the question that you are asking is actually a challenge that we are supposed to pose on all Africans that are within our context, specifically the ones who actually live in Africa or in the diaspora, to say, speak up and be confident and share what it means to be African, what it means to you. For me, I know what it means to be culturally raised as Zulu and to be born as Tswana and coming from a mother who's Sotho and a grandmother who's Xhosa. I know what that means. That would take half a day, but I know what that means. And that is what I try to share. And I was trying to share in the tea diplomacy, what that means. And the fact that my great-grandmother has Dutch grandparents herself, which explains why she was very light-skinned. So, but putting aside the Dutch part, but the African part, the Tswana, it's not just a language. The Tswana's values need to be exposed the same way that Shaka Zulu is not. Shaka Zulu is a movie, is not Zulu. Zulu is the culture, is the value systems, the why women wear certain dresses. I was having this discussion with Queen Mother that there are certain hats as an African woman, if you are not married, you are not allowed to wear them. As beautiful as they are, is tall. There's a certain way of draping a cloth when you're a Xhosa woman that you cannot drape, because that's a symbol of having lost a husband or something. But everything has depth. There's certain, all what Africa is, Africans are at fault and are the ones who now need to really say, this is what it means. This is what it means. And the people are saying this in the corners, but on platforms where they should be sharing with yourselves and everyone else, they shy away. They shy away because what the world seems to be buying into or putting money into is what looks like it has assimilated into what the West is. I mean, I live in my whole environment in terms of where I live, my home, all that. You could walk in, you could easily be in Los Angeles or anywhere in the world. but the bottom line is who I am is what you see in my kids. Who I am is our lifestyle. Who I am is not, it's not about the houses, it's not about the material things. It's the value system that we pass on and that we want to share with the world. The language, for now, what we have with each other, it's the language. I'm busy teaching one of the people Zulu, and I'm teaching them words that have a social significance, because in African culture, words are not just words. A thank you is not just thank you. When you don't like when you say siyabona, you know, everything is deeper. So for now, let's build on what we have, the music, the whatever that is we can share on platforms like this. So it is a challenge. So your question is a challenge that has to be posed. I wish I can pose it without losing friends to a lot of my African brothers on the continent and within the diaspora that we share these wonderful platforms with, and say, have confidence in that and sell that to the world while you are using the Western system for development, but also use your own systems, because without the African values, you are not going to have transparency. Without the African values, you are going to have corruption. Without the African values, you are going to have a dog-eat-dog world, which is not us. Even if there's development, do it in the context of the African value system and still be proud of who you are. I'm into that. Let me end the sermon. Thank you, Prince Andrew. Sorry.
Okay, Prophet Cox, but before you answer Prophet Cox, let me say that Juliet, you have posed both a challenge, but also an opportunity, because I heard Maddie clearly say that she's willing and able to reach out to you and others to address these issues. What I would propose to you, Juliet, is to take a leaf out of what Lisa Anise alluded to earlier. You'll find yourself among like-minded people on this platform, because most of you have been attracted to this magnet by what we call the Andrew networks, because of the aura I bring to what we do. So I'm here to fully support what you're doing, Juliet. I'm just saying, for example, earlier today in the presentation, you saw that the African Union identified the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa, in Midrand, South Africa, as its legislative body. It seems to me that you in South Africa will be the perfect person to be the liaison with that organization, and through us with Maddie in the Caribbean and with others around the world to address these very same issues. So just as I asked you for a media bio 3 months ago that I still don't have, I'm saying to you, you have to step up and actually be the person that you're claiming to be, and then own it. Don't just talk about it, be about it. Prophet Cox, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you again, Prince Andrew. And so for the emails, I'd like to be on that with Manley and Juliet, just to see what you all are up to. And I really value, Juliet, I have to say, it has to be a God thing that we've been able to be in communication these last few months. I mean, I feel like I'm in South Africa. I'm not, but I feel like it. But I do know that you work very sincerely with people who are very traumatized, who've gone through a lot. So putting that in the context of diaspora, again, it's just another question, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Sometimes when you like here, I know if you're the only Black person in a room, then you become the representative for the whole race. So I'm not trying to do that with you with the continent, but you know, you have a lot of insights and a lot of knowledge about what's going on. I just wonder, in terms of unity, how the continent or people that you know see. I think of people in the diaspora. So we were snatched away, sold away, moved away, whatever, and went through a lot of trauma, continue to go through a lot of trauma, and we're wanting to come home. And so what does that look like? We want to connect with home, even if we don't come to stay, and whether or not we're being seen. So like, I know when you have mothers and children and grandmothers and they come to you, you all are advocating and doing all you can to make sure that they can get to a place of healing and stability. And so I guess that whether those that you know who are indigenous to the continent, are they seeing us as those who have been abused and raped and beat and traumatized and murdered and all that, and that we're struggling to get back and heal, because we do want to know the laws and the principles that were allowed Africa to be great, to have the greatest universities and to build the greatest entities that can't even be replicated today. We want that. Now, in terms of some of the, because I love African clothing, I love head wraps, I can tell you what I do is that because I haven't had, well, I guess someone from Nigeria did give me some instruction, but they didn't give me what they had because I can't tie everything they can tie. So what I do is I just let the Spirit of God within me tell me what to do. And so even my name, Anyanwu, I know that Nigerians, because I got it when I was at a retreat, the name just came. And so I'm sure that probably the Nigerians would say Anyanwu. And I say Anyanwu. Why? Because it's my name. So we kind of take some privilege with some things because like children out there in the streets who may be homeless, they do what they do to survive. And so I guess I wonder and I'll let you, respond, how are we viewed because we really are wounded, traumatized, looking for some grounding to heal.
Okay. I won't be long on this one, Prince Andrew, but I just want to touch on the point that Prince Andrew also mentioned. When I was at the University of Cape Town, I'm the founder of the Society for African Students. As you know, University of Cape Town, UCT, is predominantly a white university. That time it was white. And my involvement in with a lot of young people, I'm involved in the space of more Pan-Africanist space, not politically, but in terms of changing people's minds and the whole decolonization of the mind. And what the digital world, the social media space, Facebook and everything, has actually realized the amount of work that still needs to be done. So I am very happy to take up the task and work with like-minded people to make sure that this conversation actually gets to the Pan-African, it goes to the other levels so that we heal ourselves, which now leads me to Prophet Anyawu's question of how we perceive Africans on the diaspora, which is, you see, we are a continent, okay, other than South Africa that has just received its liberation recently. We got our liberation, the latest. We are a continent that is still bleeding. So we're a continent that is bleeding. We're a continent, I'm talking about people. We are a continent that is grasping, what do you call this, when you're grasping things just at the hem, just to survive. You know, when you, if you watch the Titanic, everyone is just grabbing whatever boat and holding on to whatever log in order to survive. That is where Africa is, because how Africa has been raped of all its resources, has been raped. I'm not even going to the culture part, but has been raped of its means to be able to sustain and build itself. So Africa is grasping and it's fighting amongst itself at a communal level, the local level, the national level, the international level, to a point where Africa currently is finding a way, firstly, to understand each other. Africa is the different countries, to understand what that means, because when people are made to fight for crumbs, they get to a point where they spend more time fighting for that one slice of bread rather than saying, let's get to know each other and get to love each other. And that's where Africa is. So in terms of how Africa, and this is and but this is all based on the positions that we have, is that when African Americans or Africans on the diaspora say that they want to come back home, it's how do I put it? It's almost like, do you understand which of home do you want to come back to? Do you understand what you are coming back to? We are having people who are fighting over a slice of bread that believe that we have plenty, and they wish, because what colonization, this is what slavery, the system has done. We have people who are wishing to escape, and the media has played that role, who are wishing to escape their struggles in order to be, inverted commas, to be better. Unfortunately, it's not better. I know that on many levels. But when you use the Maslow's law of survival, when people are hungry, they could their stomachs, just the ability to eat. So generally, when and you'll have people from all over the world will have saying, please come, please come. But when you come, you are coming to understand what you're coming, and it's like, come and understand what we are going through and be one of us. You see, the fantasy of what Africa is, that is what we are working towards also as Africans in Africa. We are building. So come home, come and join us, but come and join us and part of who we are. Celebrate our Ubuntu, the way we understand Ubuntu. Celebrate our dance the way we understand our dance, celebrate our music the way we understand it, and then we work together towards fighting this evil that has actually brought us where we are economically, has drained us of our, let's fight together against the evil. But I see you the same way that I see other American out there. As for me, there's no, how does, you are as ungumtu, Amaxhosa would say that ungumtu, you see, as in you are one of us. Why are you even asking for permission? It's like asking, it's like when my child says, Mommy, can I come home? Will you work? Of course you come home. Of course you belong, we know that. But the question is, when you come home, you are coming home understanding that home, these are the values. This is what we're building. And home has its struggles, and come help to take the home out of its struggles. You see, so you are totally welcome. You actually, when you are here, you are just one of us until you open your mouth and you sound, oh, and we have a lot of South Africans and other people from Africa who sound like you. So you are welcome, and we embrace you as one of us. We understand how slavery took you away from home, but come home and understand what home is according to, and I think it's that whole, the fantasy, the myth, versus a true understanding. And as you said, these connections, they bring us closer to what really African means. And I at times, there was a meeting where Prince Andrew even reprimanded me when I was almost calling people to order to say, please don't talk of Africa as a country, because when you're saying, I'm coming to South Africa, Prophet Danyang, I know that you are going to be embraced in a Xhosa, in a Sotho, or in a Venda, I know what you're going to be embraced in, what you're going to be. So if someone says, I'm going to go to Ghana, I'm going to go to the DRC, that means you are saying, I'm going to be with those people, you see, and those people are Africans who have value systems that we need to embrace without trying to paint Africa with one brush, you see.
Juliet,
So the different aspects of Africa are beautiful. I'm done. Thank you so much.
I would
Hey,
just like
Prince
to
Andrew.
ask you,
You started it.
I would just like to
Yes.
ask you to be at least conscious of taking a breath, because as we replay this content, many of our listeners do not have English as their first language. And you don't have to rush, but you do need to give us breaks so that we can respond appropriately. Prophet Cox, your hand is raised.
Okay. No.
Yeah, I just wanted to reassure you again. My sister, again, because we've had this conversation a little bit before. So the way I look at coming, and I think the way maybe different parts of Africa may be seeing itself. When I come, I do come to Mother Africa. I don't come seeing South Africa. You're right, Uganda, Kenya, and all that. When I did go, and I have a reason for that, is that I went to was there in the 90s, and we went to Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana, Benin, Togo, and all that. And when I got to Togo, we were on a boat. You had to get up, be walk off or carried off or whatever. So when I got on the shore, the and I was a lot bigger then, so it's kind of funny, but that's another joke for another time. Because a young guy came out there who was about 11 and said, Madam, I will help you. And I said, you better get out of here, because I knew he couldn't begin to move my big toe. But anyway, so was able to get to shore, and the queen mother or priestess didn't speak English. I didn't speak her language, but she came to me and took my hand, and somehow she communicated that she thought I was the leader of our tour group. Now, our leader, let her know, no, 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 she's not the leader. She's not the leader. I am. But she looked at me and she took my hand and stuck it under her arm and dragged me up a hill anyway, even though I didn't know what she was talking about, what she was doing, like she knew me. We both had the same bracelets on. I just had bought some in the market and she had me, I had to sit in not the guest, but one of the seats that was for the tourists, and the leaders of our group sat with the king or whoever it was in the village of the seat of honor. But as soon as one of them moved, she came and got me and sat me next to her. I have a picture of it. Put her hand on my knee and would not let me move till she said so. So somehow she knew me, communicated with me in her own way. So I didn't feel like I was in Togo or Ivory Coast or whatever, something connected. When I went to India a few years ago and went to the Ayurvedic medicine on the street, and the person who was the medicine doctor there in his area, his hut or whatever, when it was time to go to my car, he took my hand and would not let it go. Matter of fact, the person who took the pictures didn't even give me the picture. She's like, why won't he let you go? It's like he knew me. And so I believe that there's something that supersedes yes, we're all, the different cultures. I guess the division part, that's the unity piece of it, is because where I've gone in several places around, my sister left me because she got mad on the street in London, England, and I didn't know where to go or how to get, and I went, and a man from Wales told me where to go. A couple from Egypt started talking, gave me their phone number. So I haven't found strangers wherever I went. So I don't see. So that's not just the matter that I'm thinking that all Africa is the same. I don't. I just think that somehow those that I connect with, I think that you and I have connected, that there's something about that that supersedes who we are on a physical, natural, everyday kind of way.
Well, I want to thank everyone for taking these 2 hours when we had no agenda to actually come up with interesting content. But I also want to give Joshua an opportunity to speak, because as a person who's in the tourism business, it seems to me that he may have some insights that could be important to this conversation. Joshua, could you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to say something. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right. Looking at the relationship between the Black community or the African community in the United States and other parts of the world and Africa, I think a whole lot has happened that we want to put behind us. There's this energy in the atmosphere that is all pulling us together. Everybody wants to come home. Everybody wants to unite. There's a whole lot of healing to do, especially with the year of return and also the COVID that came up. It brought a whole lot of remembrances, a whole lot of thoughts, a whole lot of things packed up. So I think, in my own view, Africa has accepted that the Black Americans or the Black community or the African community, whichever word is more suitable for anyone. I think, to me, Black and African is the same, because Black is not just a color. Black is a property of who we are as Africans. Black in science, in relative to physics, Black bodies emit light. We as Black beings, we also emit light. So there's some other deep stuff to talk about, but just highlighting on the words. So the Africans, indigenous people here in Africa, I believe they've come to accept that Africans that are not based in the continent are one with them. Also, regarding the fact that the African Union created the diaspora as the fifth region, I think the fifth region or sixth region of Africa, that has also created more awareness. So the basic line is, there needs to be a whole lot of understanding, especially regarding security. If you want to travel to a certain place, you need to be able to have contact, make research, get to know this place, what's the situation there, the people there, how do they live, how do I want to interact with them, and all of that. So I believe a whole lot has to be done in terms of security, making your own research, deciding to know, okay, what am I going to do? So people should not just travel because they feel like, oh, they just want to travel. You have to, just like I think Prophet mentioned, people do DNA tests to see what part of Africa they can trace their identity to. So, and there's a whole lot of things. So it all has to do with purpose and understanding, comprehension, to be able to have virtues, to relate with people, have patience, have love for each other. Just see yourself, see the next person wherever you are as your family, your brother, your sister. So in that sense, you'll be able to feel at home, because when you feel at home, then you can be able to relate properly. You can be able to identify yourself. You can be able to know, okay, this is who I am here. And when you go back to where you see as your indigenous home, if you decide to relocate, there are people that have moved to Ghana, Senegal, different parts of Africa in the recent times after the year of return, and they decided to be patriotic there. They decided to make their new home there. So it's just what it is. Wherever you are, where you've decided to make your own home, home is just the basic unit of life. So I think families, you just have to see that way. Also, regarding tourism, due to COVID, a whole lot has happened. People are not traveling so much. We're working to see how we can include innovation. Using innovation, that will be a means to be able to connect people better as well. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Juliet. You're gonna have to wait a while. In the first place, Joshua, I'm so glad you brought that up. There are several things that come to mind, particularly because I was just on a conversation yesterday with a gentleman that is unfortunately involved with risk management. And what he says is that when tourism tanked 2 years ago, many of the countries, particularly in the Caribbean, that were depending upon 80% of their income to the community through tourism, that money went away. And what happened is that, unfortunately, drug dealers, drug traffickers, and others stepped into that role. That may be the same as well in Africa and other parts of the world. But what I would ask you, Joshua, to do is stop a moment and understand how powerful you are. Because in the travel business, you now have the time in the country where you are and in those places where you want to invite people to come, to turn your camera or turn your phone into a camera so that you become not just a consumer, but a producer. You are having access to those resorts in the local areas where you are that people need to find out about. You need to now begin to also identify where those traditional places are that people want to find their roots to be. So that might not be found on Google. You may not find it in TripAdvisor. You may be the only person in your network that knows where these places are. So you have to take the time now to think about becoming the well, here in the United States, we call it, for example, you have to be your goodwill ambassador, right? For the places that you want to invite people to. But then you have to take another step. You have to become a citizen journalist. You have to be the one to talk about what nice things are that you know about, the safe places. You need to be one of the 10,000 fearless and be willing to introduce people around the world to where you want them to come. Now's the time for you to start documenting that. I'll be happy to provide a Zoom space for you where you can interview the people there that are running these places to find out who they are. People want to come home. But as Juliet says, as Prophet says, home may be different to each person that comes. Why don't you, Joshua, take the time to empower each one of the places that you have a list of where you would be taking tourists to take time to go there and do a 30-minute interview with them, record it, put it on Zoom so people can find out about where it is, and then use technology and pay in advance to either come there or to actually have a pay-per-view visit so that even if they don't leave home, they can be showed around the place. They can be introduced just as simply as you are being introduced now to all the people that are following us on the AHIABGA network. But we have to be the ones, Juliet, to use our media skills and package this content and at least as interesting a way as does CBS, NBC, SABAC, etc. We have to be the ones that show best that we can showcase who we are. That's the best way we can do to use our current resources to take advantage of these opportunities, because it is the tourists that are the top 1% of the people money. The top 1% of the people who have money are the ones that are traveling. We have to connect that top 1% with the bottom 99% of the places where they're traveling to. So I'm just suggesting that we be smart. And I'm going to share my screen with you before I take your comment, Juliet. Just a moment, please. This is not new information I'm sharing with you. In 2012, I actually took time to create what we now call the Kwanzaa Accord. And the idea was that rather than just celebrate Kwanzaa for 7 days a week at the end of the year, what we would do is celebrate the 7 Kwanzaa principles 7 days a week for 7 cycles of 7 days. And the idea was to align our efforts here in the diaspora with the African Union Agenda 2063. I don't know how many of you know what that is, even though you're on the continent of Africa. I don't know if you know that there are not just 12 flagship projects, but there are also 5 diaspora legacy projects, and that most of the African countries, or many of them, have a specific commission for the diaspora that deals with people from that country that have traveled outside of their country and are still part of the country. What I'm saying to you is that while COVID-19 has wiped out many of the income streams for Africans through tourism, also wiped out many of the income streams from development agencies, actually the money in remittances from diaspora has gone up, not down. So it's critically important you understand there are guidelines in place for you to take advantage of what already exists. So Juliet, I do agree with you that organizations like the African Union are, in many times, they're just a facade. And in many cases, the African rulers, much like here in the United States, in the Black community, they're only neo-colonialists. They're the same white people in disguise. But it's up to us, I think, to use the tools and abilities they put in place and let us bring them to our benefit. For example, the African Diaspora Legacy Projects, they include the African Diaspora Skills Database, the African Diaspora Development Markets for African Development, the African Institute for Remittances, the African Diaspora Investment Fund, and African Diaspora Volunteer Corps. I'm only saying this to you, Juliet, because there's nothing stopping us from doing these very same things ourselves among the very same people that we already know and are dealing with on a regular basis. I'll keep this brief. This is something I did in 2012. So this is not something new, but if I could find it in 2012, why can't you find it now? It was actually on May 25th of 2012 in South Africa that the Global Africa Diaspora Summit concluded.
Can you share the link on the chat?
It's in the screen. It's in the chat.
Okay. Then also, can we see how we can hello?
Well, before you, okay, so I'll stop and let you say what you want to say. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, can we see how we can get to do some partnership to get this done with AYT? Because from what is stated there, we have the resources. We just need to be able to build on it. Actually, we're supposed to be having a website for AYT, and we can have this on our website, but that might not be enough. So maybe with your expertise, you can come on board and we can see how we can get to put this together, because the
Like,
opportunity is there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
Well, yes,
can,
yes, and yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, just a moment,
continue?
Juliet. Just a moment,
Okay.
Juliet. Uh, so Joshua, I have to say that you interrupted my presentation, which I don't appreciate. But at the
So,
second moment, I'll say that we can discuss it offline. And the third thing
okay.
is that, Juliet, yes, go ahead.
No, no, I didn't. When Joshua was speaking up, I was trying to tell him to wait till he gets his turn. That's what I was trying to say to him earlier on. And then I realized that even my comment on his comment can wait until you are done, because you've already suggested a process. So he's actually climbing on, with due respect, Joseph, yeah, I think let's let Prince Andrew finish. There's a particular thought process in place that he has already
Okay.
spoken about. And in that process and in that strategy, we will include AYT, and I'm also part of AYT as a president for Gauteng. So you will be included, but let's allow
Absolutely.
the thought process, because these are very rare moments where Prince Andrew shares with us. So let's allow him to
Oh,
finish. I'm calling you
thank
to
you
order,
so much.
comrade.
Oh, thank you. But the information, for your information, Joshua, is already in the chat. So look, and the whole idea is that please take this information and copy it or do whatever you have to make sure you can follow up. I don't expect you to remember all this stuff, and I don't expect our
Okay.
audience to pay attention to any of this stuff. But unless we document it, we won't have it. We can later decide what we want to do with it, but if we don't document it, we don't get it. So,
Absolutely.
as I was saying, it was back in 2012. This is 10 years ago. Coming up in 3 days will be 10 years. So I'm suggesting that I would ask that we take a leaf out of the Declaration of Human Rights. Declaration number 29 is responsibility. So I think it's important that we take the responsibility to educate ourselves about what's currently available before we do anything else. And then the only thing we need to do is find out how to identify access to what's currently available through what we now have or through what we can ourselves provide ourselves access to. But I'll briefly go through this and then I'll get back to you. Again, this is information that's been up for 10 years. I didn't make it up. I just found it and made it available. So, for example, at that time, there's an African Union Diaspora Legacy Workshop that was set up to address these very ideas that we were talking about before. I'll briefly go through it. Africa needs to prioritize African professional experience. Generally, continental Africans migrate as students seeking higher education and subsequently doors to socioeconomic opportunities. The expatriate population is pulled to the diaspora for the economic incentives, while those who migrate as refugees are pushed out, escaping war and instability. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear: migration of skills and knowledge without reversing incentives is a net loss to Africa and what is generally referred to as brain drain, which perpetuates African dependencies on non-African know-how. No geopolitical region manages its development through dependency. Numerous and current research indicates that continental Africans are the most educated population in the United States. The fact is backed by the US Census. Similar findings has made in the United Kingdom, which was published by The Economists. The dynamics of globalization and instant technology have added to the ease with which skills can be deployed. Therefore, Africa can transform brain gain to brain circulation and reverse the net loss by using continental Africa diaspora expertise, especially in high demand across African nations. For example, the African Diaspora Skills Database involves a systematic identification and cataloging of the professional expertise of individuals. The data is most useful when specifically documented to facilitate targeted developments. For example, in health, you have epidemiology, pediatrics, emergency care, oncology, public health, information technology, infrastructure, security, communications, agriculture, agronomy, animal husbandry, marine aquaculture, education, special education, management, curriculum development, cataloging skills by disciplines and subspecialties prevents generalizations that provide information of little practical use. In order to map, match, and apply skills, targeted regions, countries, or institutions may have to identify the sectors where the professional skills are in demand. The approach is cost effective because it ensures that there is demand for a defined expertise and for specific development before the mobilization of the brain gained. This tailored approach to data collection, which is linked to specific sectors, is more valuable than generic mapping. The African Diaspora Development Marketplace focuses on entrepreneurship and innovations. The project enables African diaspora business owners like Joshua and Juliet and Kennedy to seize opportunities to competitively improve the quality of life in African communities through profitable businesses by introducing new, innovative products and services into the markets, creating jobs and boosting the economy. Development Marketplace facilitates financing for the business community, from startups to small and medium-sized enterprises, industries with high impacts to social entrepreneurs like Juliet and Joshua and Kennedy. The business owners must demonstrate their relationship to Africa. This market includes all sectors from the agro industry, food security, manufacturing, construction, transportation, biotech, information, communications technologies, to social sectors such as education, water, energy, sanitation, health, travel, tourism, as long as they are sustainable and profitable or with potentials for profitability. The African Institute on Remittances. The African Institute for Remittances is scheduled to go into full operations in 2015, 7 years ago, and hosted in Kenya. In addition to reduced costs, the fees can be used to support developments in Africa. Studies show that African migrants' remittances to African countries are second only to foreign direct investment and surpass all official development aid. Beyond remittances, the migrant wealth of continental Africans has enormous potentials for funding large-scale development projects. Remittances to Africa has grown remarkably in recent years, estimated at $60 billion annually, which is a conservative estimate and perhaps half of the actual amount, as noted by analysts who compiled the official report. Remember, this is 10 years ago. The magnitude of the remittances, which is more than the combined cash flow from the World Bank and International Monetary Fund to Africa, has gained the attention of the international development community due to the positive impacts on the standard of living for the beneficiaries. However, the transfer cost remains unacceptably high by international standards. One of the consequences is that the full potential for economic and social development is largely unrealized. For example, while South Asians pay an average of $6 for every $100 they send home, Africans often pay more than twice that amount. And from my own experience, sometimes 5 times that amount. Using South Africa as a citation, which has the highest remittance cost on the continent, nearly 21% of money designated for the needs of families back home is spent on the cost of money getting there. With an estimated millions of Africans depending on remittances from family members abroad for their economic survival, health, and education, the high cost of transactions undercuts the impact remittances can have on poverty reduction. How can it be operated more effectively and efficiently as an African-owned entity in the public sector? What are the means through which members of the community can send money? What are the advantages? Which include reduced costs of transactions and using remittances fees as development costs for poverty reduction. Continental Africans as financiers of Africa's growth. The African Diaspora Bond. Beyond remittances, the migrant wealth of continental Africans has enormous potential for funding large-scale projects in the public sector. This brings us to the African Diaspora Bond. This is a sovereign bond that is issued by the country to its diaspora members as an alternative to borrowing from the international capital market, multilateral financial institutions, or bilaterally from non-African governments. Based on a report published by the African Development Bank Group entitled Beyond Remittances, the Migrant Wealth of Continental Africa has enormous potentials for funding large-scale projects in the public sector. Oh, this is a repeat. Just a moment, please. Based on a report published by the African Development Bank Group entitled Diaspora Bonds in an African Context, continental Africans save up to an annual estimated cost of $53 billion in destination countries. It is estimated that diaspora bonds can produce $17 billion a year of continental African financing. With a sense of patriotism, direct ties in Africa, and the incentive of reasonable rates, African diaspora bonds can attract sufficient investors. The proceeds of the African diaspora bonds can also be used to develop projects that are popular in the diaspora. Now for you, Juliet, again, African Diaspora Investment Fund for nonprofits. Arguably, African diaspora constitutes the greatest Africa's offshore asset. The capacity is a crucial catalyst in accelerating the development of African countries because the stakeholders have permanent vested interests in the welfare of their localities, countries, and regions. Hometown alumni and professional networks create and perpetuate a new community among people of similar immigrant-oriented backgrounds. They represent a transnational identity rooted in their countries or region of origin with influence in both the local and international contexts. In addition, promoting African ethnic culture and heritage, these are platforms for diaspora philanthropists as they help to fund projects that range from micro enterprise, social infrastructure development, providing through the construction of clinics, water projects, libraries, classrooms, donating money for special projects, or scholarship programs for students. The African Union and governments can prioritize and maximize the expertise of these Africans by supporting and viable programs, especially for services that combat the ills of poverty, circle of unemployment, and currents of underdevelopment. So I'll stop there for our audience. But again, the link is in the chat. So those of you here can follow up as you choose. If there are no other hands raised, I'll end today's event. But I see that Juliet has a hand raised, and the floor is yours.
Wow, I'm just I'm speechless by the amount of opportunity and the will out there to do good, and how the solutions are out there, and we didn't even have to them. I mean, you said it's like 10 years old or older, and I'm hoping there's still an opportunity to still work on some of those opportunities indicated there.
Well, before you go
Presently.
further, let me tell you that as in many cases, again, this is where the governmental agencies and non-governmental agencies have come together and outlined a plan, but it didn't go anywhere because the people on the ground never knew about it. And yes, it can still go forward, but unless we do it, it won't get done. Go right ahead.
All right. Yeah, no, I hear you, and it's a challenge. It's not even a challenge because the work is being done, but we didn't know that there are opportunities like this, and it's just a matter of us organizing and structuring ourselves strategically, Joseph, not just rush in and have a more global or continental or global approach to say, okay, we'll go in with this sector, we'll go in this way, and just do the whole analysis. So there is, I see an opportunity. And as Joshua was saying that, with your guidance and your push as you're doing, we have to sit down and mind map this, because we all end up backing the same tree. But I think it's totally amazing, and I will still go through it. And I just like the sectors that were mentioned, and I like the fact that they're mentioning areas that will directly contribute towards poverty alleviation and the social ills that are caused by poverty, because everything else it's really about that. And I think it's amazing. I see Joshua has his hand up. So that means we have a lot of work to do, and this is just up my stream, like a lot of other things, but it's almost like here's a solution here, and the other things that we discussed today, Prince Andrew, which I'm very grateful for. It's clear action plans, and I love things that are more about actions rather than just continuous talking. Yes, we will work on a few things with your guidance.
Joshua, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask the offshore funds, how can it be assessed?
Your question is too broad. You have to be more specific. What is it exactly you're talking about?
You meant in the stuff we're reading, the notes we're reading, you mentioned about the remittances, the institutes for remittance, which talked about some offshore funds. So I wanted to know, how can it be assessed?
Well, I'm not trying to be funny, but I am. Why don't you click the link and find out?
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Okay.
if you want to know, find out. It's not complicated.
Yeah, it's clear.
But as I was saying, one of the benefits that the diaspora can bring to you people in Africa is for you to realize that we have a view that's much different than yours. We're looking at it from the inside of the lion's belly. I understood from the 10 years old when I was first called a nigger by the very same woman I've been buying my comic books and newspapers from for 5 years. After Martin Luther King was killed, to keep my dirty nigger hands off those books or I'd end up dead like King. And she thought she was telling me something for my own good. It was only when I went to my mother, who came back and chastised the woman, and took me home and explained that even though I was born in the United States, I was not an American by birth. I am an African by birth, not because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me. She made that very clear to me at 10 years old. So I've always known I've been a triple agent. I've been born in America as a Black man. So I have to deal with this racist system. But I've been born in this world where white supremacists has, in fact, recolonialized Africa through the Black people that are now running it. So I got to figure out some way to work this thing out. So my task was to find a way to first survive and then find a way to reconnect our entire family. There are a lot of people like me in the United States that are throughout the diaspora. We all know we have to connect the dots. We can't do it though without your help. For example, on my screen, you have Power Africa. The entire United States government has pulled together its entire resources available through one agency to deal with all of Africa. And it's available not just to us in the diaspora, but you there on the continent. But neither of us can take full advantage of it until we connect together to decide how we're going to deal with it. We have to educate ourselves on what's currently available and how most to take advantage of it. As far as you're concerned, Joshua, while you're talking about tourism, how can you not be talking about international trade? How can you not be talking about getting sponsors from the hotels and airlines that are the ones that make the most money from tourism? How can you not be talking about those things? So I'm just asking you to take a deep breath and figure out where around you are the most money being spent, and then how to direct that into our networks. So again, I'll stop sharing and turn it back over to Prophet Cox before I wrap up today.
No, I have to wrap up
Okay.
for another healing circle. I'm going from one meeting to another, but I'm still on this one. I'm hoping that you shut it down so that you can open another meeting another time that I can be on, because I've been trying to grieve over here on one side, but now I do have to lead this next circle. But really good conversation. I appreciate everything that's being shared, and you have so much information, Prince Andrew. I don't know how we get that. We don't want to do a brain drain on you, but we need to be able to get this information so we can get it activated and have some purposeful, intentional movement. Like you said, not just talking and running into one locked door and one roadblock and the powers that be knowing we just spin our wheels, but there are some answers. And you're right, the decade, who knew? I still mentioned the decade to be over in 2 years and a year and a half, and people have never heard of it. So anyway, thank you. I'm gonna try to, I got about 10 more minutes before I have to open up my other room. So let's see if I can hear the last of what you all are sharing.
All right, Juliet, I see your hand raised.
Yes, no, this one is a very good room that Prince Andrew has opened, and I'm glad I'm part of it as a start of Africa Week. I think it's all awesome. I just wanted to contextualize a comment that I made so that I'm not misunderstood. And Prince Andrew, yeah, I've commented about you shared. When I was saying that, we were saying when you come to Africa, you're coming to motherland, coming to. I specifically speak about the values of each country or the cultural values. And I think Joseph was also touching on that. The same way that when I leave my house and I go to a particular household and I'm aware, or I go to KwaZulu-Natal, I'm aware that I'm going to a Zulu environment. What that means is I always make sure that I have my duke or my head wrap in my handbag, because I might not be allowed to address certain people, the elders or anyone else, unless my head is covered. The same way that when I go to Venda, I have to be ready to take off my shoes when I come into a particular homestead. So when I was saying that the observation of the diversity of Africa goes with recognizing that every aspect that makes each group is what Africa is all about, is what makes us Africa. There are a lot of things that we have in common. And we find that in a country like South Africa, where we have everyone from everywhere in Africa, we tend to, ourselves, and let's say our neighbors from Zimbabwe, we tend to be, this is just only one sentence, we tend to be quite surprised as how people from East Africa, like what Joshua did now, can just interrupt an adult talking. That's just an example. That in certain parts of Africa, certain things are emphasized and others are not emphasized. So when you come to motherland, it's important that you understand what is important on that part and what is important on the other part. You see.
Thank you.
So those are just small innuendos that we need to recognize. Thank you.
However, I would ask that both Prophet Cox and yourself take up the determination of that particular subject offline. And Joshua, I saw that you had your hand raised. In the interest of trying to get factual activities done and a plan of action, I would also ask if in the chat you would put in any suggestion that you have about ways that we can positively move forward with the time that we have remaining. I believe it will be very beneficial because each time that we complete one of these events and do have the chat, we can, if we choose, make that become our plan of action. So I'll, Joshua, unless you'd like to say something else, I'll allow Prophet Cox to make her closing comment in 2 minutes or less.
Or less, okay. I just wanted to say that that could be part of the tourism piece. Joshua was saying that the ritual and all that, we can have some instructions on protocols. The other thing, just as a last note in 30 seconds, is my mother, even though I grew up in this country, born African-American, my mother's thing was to tell me I knew nothing about protocol. So for me, it's not just Africa. I just, need to learn protocol overall. So that's my last bit. But yes, let's put that, because there's no way to know, this unless we're taught.
So Joshua, you've heard in several cases indications that you, Joshua, could become, as the youngest member of our team, also the leader of the team, because you are in a position to do multiple things. One thing, you could begin to, among your own existing network, have the local communities appoint some person to be the one to make sure that people coming into the community know what proper protocols to follow. You could take an additional step and record that in a video. You can even go so far as to classify that for every area that you're working in, so that we don't have to do the same thing over and over again. This becomes valuable intellectual property. Then not only can people pay you to get the information, you could pay that to some of the people that actually put these together for you. Again, Juliet, whenever she gets her media bio around to me, I can share with you, and we can find ways to collaborate and use this very same Zoom platform that you're on now to broadcast that content on a regular basis. That's what it's for. But now the floor is yours. Go right ahead.
That was a good closing comment. It's just about actioning it.
Well, Joshua had his, Joshua, did you have anything to say or not? I guess not. Okay, so I see one more hand raised. It looks like the color of Prophet Cox.
Yeah, it's just on what you're saying, and Juliet said, Joshua, and I'm excited about this because we do naming ceremonies.
Thank you.
Virtual naming ceremonies, virtual people knowing what the African-centered way of doing weddings and all that. There's a lot of profitability in all of that. So,
well, Prophet Cox, that's a call to action for you to be the one to perhaps again use this platform to have those documented, have them classified, and then have them professionally produced so that they are able to not just be social media TikTok content, but also public service announcements. Queen Mother Nina just notified me yesterday. She has access to all the public service television stations in the United States, but it's up to us to get our content professionally prepared so that we can take advantage of that. So Joshua, I think, Joshua, are you able now to get back to us? Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up.
And you can tell me right, what that looks like with all that putting it. Yeah, because if it's we did naming ceremonies here in the community. So you're saying take that and make that something that we put out there.
If it's valuable to you, it's valuable to someone else. Why aren't you taking advantage of your own skill sets and expertise to create intellectual property value that you can monetize?
That's a real good question. Okay, with that, I'm on mute.
All right, Joshua, back to you before we close.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello.
We-
Yes. So, firstly, I wanted to say thank you for the suggestions regarding the documentation of traditional places and community protocols. I'll get on that to see how I can communicate to you when I can make that available for us to have a Zoom presentation, and also have some recorded files that can be used to create stores to monetize it. Then regarding the big corporations that make most of the money in tourism, which you mentioned, trying to get funding from them, such as the airline companies, that has been raised before, and I have that down on my notes, but um, I've not yet started working on it because we had some imbalances, and my team was mentioning for us to be able to access that, we have to register our network so that we can be able to communicate with them. But I'm still looking towards other opportunities, and I'll get back on that. Finally, Prophet was mentioning having some naming ceremonies and rituals for healing for tourists that will be returning, either virtually or physically. That's a very good thing to do, and I would like to work on what we have on it in 7th of July. So I don't know if Prophet still on the call, it should be available to, you'll be available to make a short presentation for 1 hour of healing, or I don't know how you program it to, but let's see if we can have a presentation from you on the launch day if it's possible. Thank you.
Well, you may want to turn off your video the next time you speak, but I see Lisa Anise is back with us now. And before I go to you, Lisa Anise, what I do want to share with you, Joshua, is that I would suggest one of the first things you do, I'll put this link, let me put the link in the chat now. I already in the chat with you and your other team put in the tourism for SDGs, and I thank you for following up on that. But in the tourism business, you need to understand that there is an existing organization that's focused on tourism. So it's up to you to do your homework to find out how the sector that you're involved with already has a global impact. It's also necessary, if you're able to, participate with some of the online events. Many of these organizations, because of COVID, have now started providing online access, whereas one time you had to travel hundreds or thousands of miles and pay hundreds or thousands of dollars. But now, if you just take the time to plan, you can actually decide to make the investment in your data rather than make an investment in your travel, to be able to participate with events that have a lot to do with how you make your money. In addition to the World Health or the World Tourism Organization, there's a World Trade Organization. In many cases, Joshua, the major hotels in all the cities in Africa have conventions. They have events where corporations from around the world are spending thousands of dollars to have events. Each one of those could become your customer, so they can pay you to be able to showcase what they're doing to your audience, and at the same time, perhaps even pay Juliet to put together proposals and packages that could be spread worldwide, and even pay Lisa Anise for her expertise in connecting this with cultural activities that are happening in the community. So all I'm saying to all of you
And pay
is that,
Prophet Cox.
pardon?
I said, and pay Prophet Cox.
Well, unless you say yourself, I mean, all I'm doing is using examples. I didn't
I know,
include.
I just want to be in that example. So if we put together these culturally specific healing travel packages and stuff, then they can include me.
Well, Ezra, Mr. Kennedy has been trying to get in and out, but because he's involved with sports of all kinds and coaches, I mean, it's obvious to think about here in Los Angeles, we have $2 billion soccer stadiums. We have $2 billion
Yes.
football stadiums. We have $2 billion
All right.
baseball stadiums. How can you not be talking about ways that we can engage the local corporations here to pay for our young Black kids and brown kids and white kids and poor kids to get involved with what you're doing? I don't know, but I'm just saying that we could.
Yes, actually, I have to go mute, because of my internet, but I've been following what everybody has been saying. I mean, so yes, we are open to plug into this opportunity because we are just here to see how we can leverage on any available opportunity that we can plug into so that we can achieve impact for the benefit of Africans and friends of Africa, just as
Excuse me, I'm gonna again wind up, but what I'm telling you, what I'm telling Joshua, what I'm telling Prophet, what I'm telling Julia, what I'm even telling Lisa Anise, who knows better, right? It's not up to anybody to tell you how to plug into what. It's up to you to figure out what there is to plug into, and let us help you connect that dot. That's what I suggest. Lisa Anise, you've been in and out. Would you like to make any closing thoughts? Oh, she's already out. Okay, so Prophet Cox, let's see. I guess we're back to the windup now. So there's just us. So Juliet, I didn't see you. Now's the time for closing thoughts. Or not.
I gotta start.
I'm
All right,
here. I'm here.
thanks
I
so
was in
much
the chat.
for the debate.
Joshua. Joshua. Mncane wena. No, sorry, I was in chat, so excuse me.
Yeah.
Can I
You
go
can go
ahead,
ahead,
Prince Andrew?
Juliet.
Yes,
Okay.
Juliet.
Yes, no. My closing thoughts and words are, we really appreciate this, and more than anything else, the inspiration to act, and the inspiration and the challenge to look deeper. Like when you are going to a mine, I live in a mining town, where if you want to get any gold or diamond, you really have to go deep and dig and put in the work. So, and that's exactly what I believe we are taking from what you've shared, Prince Andrew, and all the deliberations that in the searching and in the looking, we'll be able to put together a plan of action that also defines who we are as Africans in totality, whether diaspora, which I also don't like because I believe we're all African, and also how we unpack what that means on a day-to-day basis. And so this has been quite an excellent session and open. And I think more than anything else, Africa Week or Africa Month, what it means is we are all Africans. I mean, I've had debates like that. We are all Africans, and no one has to convince anyone of the fact that they are African. What it then means is we have to share and live that on a day-to-day basis. And we think you will do the work, and then hopefully we'll have another session, Prince Andrew, not anytime soon, maybe, where we can to see what mind maps are there in exploring these opportunities, but we need to do them within this Africa month while there's the momentum. Because in June, we are dealing with June month, Youth Month, we are dealing with the struggle. So if we can use the Africa month, maybe to have another session to do a mind map, I'm prepared to have a mind map and bring in the other people are here and say, okay, what does it mean in terms of tourism? What does it mean in terms of health? What does it mean in terms of dance and arts and so forth? What does it mean in terms of other areas? I'll just do the mind map and we'll all just put the dots based on the information that you'll be sharing or that you have shared. Thank you so much again.
Actually, there are 2 more dates coming up this week when we can follow up. Because again, the only way this happened today is because the person who scheduled it wasn't here. There are 2 more dates this week that, again, we may be forced to decide what we want to do. So we can take advantage of that time if you want to follow up, and we can take next steps. Looks like tomorrow at 11:30 our time, and also on Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Anyway, I know who you are, so I'll give you options so you can register for that event as well. Yes, Juliet, your hand is raised. Is your hand raised, Juliet, or was it raised from before?
No, it's me. It's me. I'm busy talking to myself here. Sorry, I was muted. Oh God. It's that time. It's 11:30. I was saying that because we have the Africa Day events tomorrow, and I'm presenting tomorrow, and I'm co-hosting with Queen Nina Tuesday and also on Wednesday. So we will attend whatever sessions, but it would be good maybe to have a session on Friday, if there is time, to do just a mind map on based on what we've received.
If Friday is open for everything, so but now's the time to lock it in because it's getting busy. So you set the time on Friday, and we'll make ourselves available.
Friday, for me, Friday, South African time being.
You don't have
I'm
to
very
make the
good
decision
with
now.
the 4 o'clock.
You don't have to make
So
the
we can,
decision
we
now.
can discuss it. Yeah.
I'm just saying,
problem.
Friday, you decide. Okay, I've been on a
Yes,
marathon
I'm
too.
good with
Well, you chose Friday, so I
Andrew?
said, okay, Friday. So you choose the time.
Yes, I'm thinking in terms of South African time. I want to say 2
I
o'clock
don't
in the
care what time it
afternoon.
is. You set the time. Either we can be there or we won't. But I'll make available the space.
Okay, awesome. Sure. How's Friday? 1 o'clock? 1
Julia,
p.m. South African time.
I'm done with that conversation. We can figure that out later. It's not right this second. But I'm asking if there's any close.
Okay.
I have a meeting coming up in 3 minutes. Or 3 minutes ago.
No, I'm good. I'm done. I'm done. We've set the time and the date. For me, it means we are done. But I think you can close, Prince Andrew, please.
Okay, very well. I am going to close now unless there's any closing thoughts. I'm going to wrap this up. Oh, let me share my
Oh,
screen. For
can you give us closing thoughts, please?
Can I give you closing thoughts?
Yes, you always thought, yes, please. Based on the discussions from today, what's your summation, please?
Well, let's go back to the beginning. Today's entire session was all about Umoja, which is unity. The intent was for us to share our varied backgrounds and interests to find a pathway forward. So I'm very excited and honored to have been involved with this session with the people on the line and those people that may tune in to our audience worldwide. But for me, this is, in fact, the beginning of a cycle that will continue for the rest of my life, which is on Sundays, I'll be focusing on Umoja, which is unity. On Mondays, Kujichagulia, which is self-determination. Tuesdays, Ujima, which is collective work and responsibility. Wednesday, Ujama, which is cooperative economics. Thursday, and let me tell you about Thursday. Thursday here is identified as Nia, our purpose. But when I was inducted as a prince in the Akan kingdom, it was made clear that the day of the week of my birth, which is Thursday, would in fact be my name, which is Yao. YAO. So all of what I'm doing, Juliet, is in the furthest of my purpose on life. So again, on Thursday, we'll be celebrating Purpose or Nia. On Fridays, Kumba, which is creativity. Saturday is faith or Imani. And so we'll begin again to go through this cycle for the rest of my life. But the idea that we have to align ourselves with a bigger purpose than our own lives. And in our particular case, those of us that consider ourselves to be of African descent, which, as Prophet Cox knows, it was just August the 2nd of last year that the United Nations decided there would, in fact, become a permanent forum for people of African descent, involving, as I understand it, several dozen countries, let me just put it that way, and over 1 billion people. But Juliet, they don't know they're all part of one family. So as a media representative, I'm asking you to make sure that the Andrew Networks gets that word out to as many people as possible, and that we bring them all into everything we're doing collectively so we can find Umoja as our first step towards unity for the rest of our lives and our children's lives and our children's children, as we have for the ancestors whose shoulders we stand upon. So with that, thank you all for joining us, and we're going to end today's session.